The Detroit Pistons, Atlanta Hawks, and the Toronto Raptors are expected to be suitors for Anthony Davis, according to Shams Charania. What is up, basketball fans? Welcome to the Ratch Report. For today's video, I'm going to be talking about the Toronto Raptors and some players that could be moved in a trade for Anthony Davis, what a trade potentially could look like, and I'll be discussing the pros and cons of trading for Anthony Davis. That's something I like to do on this channel, where I like to take a look at both sides of the argument, and ultimately I will give you my opinion on whether or not the Toronto Raptors should trade for AD. So if you're ready to watch this video, make sure to hit the subscribe button. And with that being said, let's get into today's video. So taking a look at this chart here, I've divided this into two different categories of players that could be included in a trade for Anthony Davis, who makes $54 million. And in the middle there, you see the first round picks that the Toronto Raptors possess. They have all of their first round picks leading up to 2031, which is great to have when you're making trades like this. Now, starting on the left-hand side here, these are players that you will have to include for salary purposes. And on the right here, you're going to have to include some of these younger players to entice the Dallas Mavericks to give up 80 to you. Now, starting on the left-hand side here, you got RJ Barrett, who makes $27.7 million. You have Jakob Poeltl, who makes $19.5 million. You have Emmanuel Quickly, who makes $32.5 million. And then you have an expiring contract of Ochai Agbaji that makes $6.3 million. On the right-hand side, you got Jacoby Walter, he makes 3.6. You got Grady Dick, who makes 4.9. And then you got some of the lesser, I don't want to say they're not younger players, but some of the lesser talented younger players that the Raptors have that you could throw in there if need be. You don't necessarily have to, but in case you do need to make the money work, depending on the combination of players you throw, you do have Jamison Battle, Jonathan Mogbo making $1.9 million each, and they both play different positions. Jamison Battle, a three-point shooting sniper that could give, the Dallas Mavericks a real player they could really use to space out the floor with Cooper Flag, and Jonathan Mogbo, a power forward, he can pass, rebound the ball, and play pretty good defense. Now, starting on the left-hand side here, if you are trading for Anthony Davis, again, keep in mind he makes $54 million. You're going to have to trade a combination of Jakob Poeltl and one of RJ Barrett and Emmanuel Quickly. It's going to be very challenging for the Raptors to trade both RJ Barrett and Emmanuel Quickly together for AD, because now the Dallas Mavericks will have to throw in another player to make the salaries facilitate a little bit better, because that will exceed the $54 million that AD has. And then realistically, you are taking a bad player back in return. So realistically, the Toronto Raptors will have to trade Jakob Poeltl and one of RJ Barrett or Emmanuel Quickly. Now, the biggest question here you have to ask yourself is which one, because the Raptors can trade RJ, but they haven't really looked very good offensively without him in the starting lineup. But if you do trade Emmanuel Quickly, you lose a player that not only shoots threes at a high volume, but also hits them at a really good percentage as well. And for a Toronto Raptors team that isn't a great three-point shooting team to begin with, even though some of their starting players have been hitting the three-point shots really well, particularly someone like Scotty Barnes, you do have to question which of these players you're going to throw in. And then, of course, you have Ochai Agbaji, who doesn't make as much money, but he is an expiring contract. And for a team like the Dallas Mavericks that want to shed a lot of money, it doesn't hurt having expiring contracts as well. So this is going to be really interesting, which combination of players the Raptors will throw in. Obviously, their first round picks here, they do have all of their first round picks up leading up to 2031. So they can throw a combination of these players. I would personally throw only one of Jacoby or Grady Dick. I wouldn't throw both of them in there. And then you can just add one of Mogbo or Jamison Battle. Again, I personally don't want to give up Jamison Battle just because I think he's so much more than he's shown on the court this year and hasn't really had playing time. But these are the players you're going to have to include for salary purposes. Obviously, players like Colin Murray, Boyles, Jamal Shed, I will not trade. And of course, players like Brandon Ingram and Scotty Barnes are off the table to begin this trade talk, because that's the whole reason you're trading for AD. So let's move on and talk about some of the pros when we're talking about trading for Anthony Davis. So the biggest pro of trading for Anthony Davis is you get a rim protector. The Raptors, haven't had a lot of good centers since post-championship, but Jakob Poeltl has never been someone that can deter a lot of shots at the rim. He's never been a huge shot blocking big anyway. So this would finally give the Raptors they haven't had for quite a while, which is someone that just scares defenses from attacking the basket, and that is something that AD definitely does. He may not be what he once was in terms of shot blocking ability, but he still is a much better option than the Raptors have had in quite some time at the center position. He's also a great lob threat as well, and this definitely keeps defenses on their toes, for the simple reason that you always need to be concerned about, just going up there and defending AD as well. So when you got, for example, a player like Scotty Barnes attacking the basket, you definitely kind of get stuck in the middle there, because obviously Scotty's going to attack the basket, but he can also throw it up for a lob with the AD there as well. And defense becomes top 5 in the NBA. I didn't specify that, but defense instantly becomes a top five for the Toronto Raptors. Currently, I believe they're ranked ninth as it stands, and they're only about 1 or 2 points behind in terms of defensive rating of becoming a top five. And 80 definitely, shifts that defense to the top five very, very easily. He also provides more scoring. I mean, the guy is, scoring 20 plus points a game as compared to Jakob Poeltl. So he definitely helps the Raptors on both ends of the floor. He provides them with more scoring and also better defense as well. He can also guard multiple positions. He's obviously best ideal position you want to play him as at the center position. But if he gets switched on to a smaller forward, he can keep up with them as well. And the last thing here, the biggest, I mean, I shouldn't say the biggest, but one of the biggest needs for the Raptors currently is rebounding the ball. We saw against the Knicks, they did a terrible job of rebounding the ball, and something AD does very, very well is rebound the ball quite well. All right, so now to touch upon some of the cons of trading for Anthony Davis is he makes a ton of money. $54 million is a lot for AD, especially considering the next con here is his injury concern. If he's not playing a ton and he's making $54 million, all of a sudden that becomes very challenging because we know what the limitations are when you exceed the luxury tax, and the Toronto Raptors are already past that. So it's going to complicate things a lot further for a Toronto Raptors team if AD is not only playing because they don't have a lot of options at the center position already, and AD is going to be the only realistic option at the center position when or if the Raptors do trade for him. And then on top of that, he's making a ton of money. He's obviously got injury concerns as well. And another thing I do want to add in terms of cons of trading for AD is you're going to have to give up assets in a trade now. For a Toronto Raptors team, they don't have a ton of assets outside of their first round picks. And if you're even giving up two first round picks, now all of a sudden that does limit the amount of assets you have in future trades. And keeping the previous cons in mind, that really does hinder how much better this team can get because now you put a cap space, not cap space, excuse me, now you put a cap on how much better in terms of trades you can make heading into the future, right? If AD is on the Toronto Raptors, you've given up all these players. There's not a lot of assets left to trade besides Colin Murray, Boyles, and first round picks. The Raptors will be going all in with this trade. So essentially, if the Raptors do make this trade, the reason I say this is because the Toronto Raptors have a good amount of players that make, 27, $32 million, as you see with RJ there, with Emmanuel Quickly, with Jakob Poeltl making $19.5 million. But if you're getting rid of at least two of these players, now you don't have a lot of players that make a good amount of money that you need to trade, another player for. If the Raptors do have another need, for example, if they do trade Emmanuel Quickly, then they'll need a starting point guard. And if they do look to trade for a starting point guard, you don't have a lot of salary to throw. And you've also given up some of your younger guys as well. So it really does limit the assets you can throw into future trades. Anthony Davis is also not a great three-point shooter. So even though he does hit them occasionally, he isn't a spectacular three-point shooter. So there is that concern with him because the Raptors, ideally, in an ideal situation, you would want your center to be able to shoot threes. I know he does hit them occasionally, but not at a very good rate. He is also not a good free throw shooter. Now, this is an issue for the Toronto Raptors because when you're going, for 80, you're essentially going for a deep playoff run. And what happens when teams start to foul Anthony Davis in late game situations? He was a better three-point shooter before. The last 2 seasons, he shot 4.5 or more free throws a game, and he's shooting under 70%. So that is a concern, personally for me. You want your centers to be able to hit free throws at a respectable rate, at a good rate, especially if you're trading for someone like AD. Contract could age poorly due to his injury history. Now, every time we talk about the Raptors potentially trading for a player that is injured, oftentimes a lot of fans will bring up someone like Kawhi Leonard, but do keep age into mind. Kawhi Leonard was not 32 years old when he traded for him. And although we look at players like, James Harden, we talk about Steph Curry, we talk about KD and LeBron, and how amazing it is that those players are able to be effective into their late 30s. For all of the players, like those, there's also players like Anthony Davis and Paul George that simply cannot stay healthy, especially even in their early 30s. So, I mean, Anthony Davis is 32. He's going to be 33 this spring. So if he's injured, and if he's not healthy this season, now all of a sudden you do have him locked in for 2 more seasons, and you're going to essentially have someone making close to $60 million at age 34. So then all of a sudden, it does really hurt the Toronto Raptors in terms of just dead salary, right? So that is a huge concern for me personally. And pretty much just said age is a concern as well. He's going to be 33 this springtime. So, to kind of tie in with all of his limitations, all of his injuries as well, it is going to be a very, very risky trade. And again, I know fans have this idea that the Raptors have done it before. We've traded for Kawhi Leonard. We've made it work when he was an injured player, and he was so healthy with the Toronto Raptors. And the Raptors do have one of the better medical staffs in the NBA, which I cannot disagree with. But you also have to be honest and realistic. Not every trade is going to work out the way that Kawhi Leonard trade did. That team was well better structured around Kawhi Leonard as well. And even if we do trade for AD, there are a lot of concerning issues with the Toronto Raptors as well. And if you personally ask me, I personally would not trade for AD. The high risk, high reward is just too much. There's way too much risk involved. You're losing draft capital. And you're on top of that, you're also going to be potentially stuck with a very injury prone player who's hit it into his mid 30s and on a very, very big contract as well. So, again, if you ask me, I would not trade for AD. He makes way too much money, way too much injury concerns with him. But I'm very curious to hear your thoughts. Would you trade for Anthony Davis or not? And who would you trade if you had an option between RJ Barrett and Emmanuel Quickly? Out of the two, who would you trade? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. And as always, I do have a trivia question for you today. And the trivia question for today is, where did Anthony Davis play college basketball? Was it A, Duke? Was it B, Kentucky? Was it C, North Carolina? Or was it D, UConn? So whoever answers this trivia question correctly first in the comment section gets a shout out in my next video. So that will be it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you guys have yourselves a great day.